How's everyone doing today? This is Robert Gums with a very interesting guest on today's Concern Forum. And introduce yourself to the folks. This is your first time.
Freddie Chambers.
Okay.
I was a sound engineer all my life.
Okay.
And I collected photographs for decades of the neighborhood I was born in, Bedford-Stuyvesant. So finally, finally, after people harassed me, I finished a couple of books on the history of it.
Yeah. This is very interesting. Mm-hmm. And see, this is interesting to me because it deals with Brooklyn. And I'm from Harlem originally. And besides the fact that I love history, the fact that you have African Americans so involved in this, because at a time when a lot of these Trump states are trying so hard to erase the history of African Americans and Hispanics and Native Americans and Asian Americans, I find it so interesting and quite frankly hopeful that we have people out here that are basically instrumental in keeping alive the memories of who we are and who we were as communities. And I think that that's very important. Might be able to get into some more of this a little bit later. But, that's one thing that really irks me about some of the people in this country. It's like they talk about, they would give you the impression that everything is everything. It's always been like this. And the truth of the matter is that no, it hasn't. All right? Here in New York, what are the names? From New York City all the way up to the Canadian border. Look at the names of the towns and the roads. Dutch. And who came before them? The Native Americans. And it's funny because you want to talk about Harlem. Do you know I was a grown man before I actually, I learned that black folks actually built Harlem. A lot of people don't realize that. The Dutch had us in slavery, and they had us the first building of Harlem. And we're talking about the 1630s, 1640s. That was done by black people. And the road out here, what's the big street in Manhattan? Broadway. We built Broadway. I mean, this is not like some kind of comedy show, Well, yeah, we built the Eiffel Tower, crap like that. No, I mean, this is real history. And people need to know these things. Because if you don't know where you've been, how the hell can you figure out where you're going? And as I said, this is the Concern Forum. And I'm your host, Robert Gums. And today we have our very interesting guest, young Freddie here. And something else I want to say, and that's that the truth doesn't change. If I see Joe hit Bill with a baseball bat, that's what I'm saying. You don't let anyone, confuse you. And that's something that I think that we really need to keep in mind in this country. Now, we have a problem. Well, we have a few problems in America today. One of which is that you have a situation where a large amount of, especially white working class people, well, I wish they would stop allowing that certain part of the Republican Party to make chumps out of them. It's not about hate. It's not about hate Whitey or anything any of that nonsense. It's not about that. But I don't like to see my fellow citizens being played for fools. And that's what I call it the traitorous wing of the Republican Party. That's what they are about. They are about treating working class whites, they're taking them for chumps. And white working class people, they need to realize this. They need to deal with it. Don't let anybody continue to play you for a fool. Ask the Republicans, you working class white folks out there, ask these Republicans that want you to destroy your government and to destroy democracy, ask them where in the hell is their health care bill? Ask them, just go walk up to them and ask them. They rose all kinds of holy hell against Obama in '09 for his health care plan. I know now a lot of those same working class whites that were told that, oh, well, Obama is a communist, he's trying to steal your health care, which they didn't have in the first place. But yeah, he's a communist, he wants to steal your health care. Well, that was '09. This is '22. A lot of those same people would chop your arm off if you try to take away Obamacare. Because for a long time, they believed the BS that the right wing of the Republican Party was telling them. And I find it so ironic that, the Republican Party talks about people being rhinos and all this kind of crap. Now, I grew up in the Republican Party. I would like to say the real Republican Party. I'm talking about Eisenhower. I'm talking about Dirksen. I'm talking about, what's that guy's name? From Utah, Romney. I'm talking about Romney. Not Romney, the one we have now, but I'm talking about his mom and dad. They were Republicans, and they were beautiful people. And they were for ERA, they were pro-choice, they were pro-civil rights. As a matter of fact, that was generally what the Republican Party was about. And unfortunately, like I've been telling people time and again, you let that right wing combine with a lot of Southern Dixiecrats who were upset with the Kennedys and then with Johnson because they fought for civil rights, and they left the Democratic Party and they became Republican. And year by year, decade by decade, they literally poisoned the Republican Party. And that's why you have the mess that you have today. That's how you wound up in 2016 with a damn lying, bigoted, sexist sneak thief getting the Republican nomination. And, I look at people sometimes, I mean, my God, it really makes me wonder. Because everybody knows Trump. Everybody knows his pedigree. That's why I'm so ashamed of, black artists like Larry Elders, like, what's that kid's name? Not Jay-Z. No, thank God. But what's the name of that music star that was married to the girl?
I don't know.
His mom died a while back.
Oh, you talking about Kanye West?
Yeah, Kanye West.
Yes.
All right. I mean, Kanye West, Larry Elders. that brother running for governor in Georgia.
Oh, you mean the football player?
Yeah, what's his name? Herschel?
Herschel Walker.
Yeah. I am so, I feel so ashamed and I feel so sorry for Herschel because they are playing this guy, man.
I really don't know their politics. I can't.
Well, they don't really know their own politics.
Yes,
That's the sadness of it. And, you want to talk about this thing that's happening now between Russia and the Ukraine. I think that Joe Biden, he's on top of this, and he's doing the right thing. That's the most important thing. Because Putin has this idea that he is Russia's savior. All right, he has this Masonic idea in his head that he is going to save the West and that he is going to save Russia. He is the Messiah, okay? And that's scary as hell. But if you know anything about Russia, it shouldn't surprise you because Russia has yet to learn what democracy is all about. And it doesn't make a difference when you talk about Russia as the Soviet Union or whether you're talking about Russia being ruled by the Tsar. It doesn't make any damn difference. Intel guy, as a matter of fact, it was a Brit, and that was hanging around in our State Department back in the 80s, who I got to know. And he said something that's always stuck with me. Russia is going to be Russia. It doesn't make a difference if they have a communist commissar, a Politburo, all that good crap, or whether they have a czar, a king. Doesn't make a difference.
Actually, Tsar, that actually means Caesar, isn't that?
Yeah, it comes from Caesar.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because I guess they are, in 1917, when they assassinated supposedly the Tsar and his family, that was the end of the Roman Empire. Of
the last vestige?
The last vestige, the last symbol. Because, it went from the Roman, the head of the empire being in Rome, and then the Western Empire fell. Mm-hmm. That was transferred to the Eastern Empire.
The Eastern section.
Right.
Which is based on what, is that based with St. Peter, was it?
No.
It's based on which
No,
saint?
the Western Empire, what happened?
The Eastern Church, I'm sorry.
Yeah. The Western Empire, basically the Pope.
Okay.
All right. That's where the Pope in the Roman Catholic Church, my original church, that's where they got their prestige from.
Right.
Because, I'm the Pope, I'm in Rome, this was the seat of empire.
Papa.
Papa. And then what happens, after they fell, they could not hold back the Ostrogoths, or what we would call the barbarians.
Right.
That crown flips over to Constantinople.
Okay.
Or as we now call it, Istanbul, where the Eastern Empire had been set up. And then what happened, the Eastern Empire they were the group that went to the steppes and the mountainous regions, and they converted the Russians to Christianity. Only it was Eastern Orthodox Christianity. And so that kept the thing of the Holy Roman Empire, kept it afloat. And then finally with the Russian Revolution and the fall of the Kerensky government, that put an end to the whole idea of holding empire, let's say. And it doesn't make a difference with Russia because they're going to do what they're going to do. And it doesn't make a difference if they're communists, if they're the Tsar, if they're the patriarch of Constantinople.
Now, isn't one of their peeves the fact that they're trying to put NATO on their border? That's one of his. That's what I understand was one of his peeves.
Well, see, that's the thing with Putin,
Yeah.
right? Putin, he kind of snuck in there because the last guy, our guy, right after Gorbachev, remember you had Gorbachev, and then you had the guy that came after Gorbachev. And I can never remember this guy's name. I just remember he was a big drunk.
Alcoholic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
alcoholic.
Yeah.
Like, be kind.
I was at the UN at the time.
Right.
Basically, I was flattered when you called me young. I'm 70 years old.
Oh, really?
So my name slip. But I was at the UN at the time. Very interesting. He was the one, I think, when they were trying to, remember when they would try to overthrow Russia under Gorbachev?
That's
he
right.
stopped it. Yes.
That's right.
like
He
I
was
said.
the one that stopped it.
Right.
And then he made Putin his deputy.
Right. Who came from the Russian Secret
Right.
Service?
He came from
KGB.
KGB.
Right.
He was a colonel in the KGB. Now I know Putin from his KGB experience because I got to the White House, and that was in the end of '82, and I was there until '88 before I went back to sea, and I caught the last significant part of the so-called Cold War. And believe me, brother, there was nothing cold about it.
No, you were at sea in the Navy at the time.
Well, I was at sea from '80 to '82.
Oh, okay.
The first time, that was my first sea
Are you,
duty.
you on aircraft carriers?
I was on the Nimitz.
The Nimitz.
Yeah.
The nuclear ship. Okay, yeah.
Right.
Nuclear carrier. They're huge.
And then I decided to really enlist, and I had decided that in '81. And so what immediately happened, they began the background check, and that took almost a damn year. Believe it or not. This guy, my handler, because when you do that, right, when you go to DIA, right, even though you are already in the military, they give you a handler. And this guy, I mean, he was telling me stuff that I had done that I didn't remember, and it was very interesting. He got a
Tell me the story.
oh man. Well, what happened? I was at that time I had been married, and my wife at the time, I mean, she's fine now, done very well for herself in North Carolina. She said she had to get the hell out of Virginia. I don't blame her. But her friends said, well, he joined the Navy, so why don't you just take his checks and enjoy yourself, right? I mean, which was cool because I did not expect her, nor would I want her, when I have to go to sea. I didn't want her to, sit around the house and just look in the mirror? I mean, my God, she's a young woman, she should have friends, enjoy life, and which would have been cool. But they wanted her to go all the way. And unfortunately for me, she did, right? And we had, our son and everything. So me and her mother-in-law, that was a very, very interesting, because we had some knockdown dragouts, but we always respected each other. So when you're getting the clearance, I never told anyone this, when you're getting you're working for your security clearance, right? You got your main handler, and he will give a direction, the FBI, CIA, right? Mainly. And what he does, he has them go to, your local law enforcement. So in my case, they had to check with the cops here in New York, and then they had to check with the cops in Virginia, because I had lived in Virginia for a little while after I left New York. And then, naturally, check with family members, if you're married, especially if you're married, right? So these guys, I know it was one guy from the FBI, and he had someone with him, and they go to my mother-in-law. They're in Richmond, right? And because I had told them, I said, well, yeah, my wife and myself, we're on the outs, basically. And at that time, the book was on the way to being closed, right, on the marriage. So they're thinking, well, this guy's mother-in-law is probably going to talk about what kind of SOB this kid is and blah, blah, blah. Man, they go to my mother-in-law's house. They meet my little son, God rest his soul. And,
Let me just inject one thing.
Yeah.
The name is Yeltsin. Isn't it Boris Yeltsin?
That's it. Yeah, Yeltsin.
So, continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you told me that because I had forgotten.
Yeah, I too.
But they start talking to the mother-in-law, right? Now, the mother-in-law, she was no princess. I mean, this lady had been around, right? Had been incarcerated a couple of times, right? But you gotta remember, Virginia and their court system is extremely hard on black people, all right?
The legal system?
Yeah, very hard on black people. I mean, one woman went to prison for 5 years because she tried to shoplift a chicken.
For 5 years?
Yeah, you go in the supermarket and chicken's wrapped up, a whole chicken, and the woman tried to put it in her bag, and she got caught. Because it's not a nice thing to do, but she was hungry, obviously. And they called her for shoplifting, and she wound up getting 5 years, And I said to myself, well, that's when they told me, when my ex-wife told me, and her mother-in-law, I remember she was there at the time also, and they were telling me about this. And I said, well, even if you don't have a clean record, 5 years for stealing a whole chicken, which at that time you're talking about maybe $3 or something.
Right. 25 cents a pound or something.
Yeah, and I'm saying, well, that's a bit cruel. Even if it's not your
Draconian.
first offense. Yeah, draconian. Well, that's the way it was. It still is to a point in Virginia, especially in Richmond.
Is it different, say, like in, well, I used to go to the Carolinas. My mother was from South Carolina, father was from North Carolina. Is it, say, different, say, Pennsylvania or?
Slightly.
Okay.
Slightly. I would say it's much harsher, quite frankly.
Okay.
Hell, I almost got locked up when I first had moved down there. That's the most foolish thing my parents ever did, moved to Richmond in the mid-'70s. But anyway, what happens, they're asking, well, what kind of person is Robert? And the mother-in-law, her name is Goldie, was Goldie. As a matter of fact, she passed away, cancer. But she said the most nicest things about me, And then she turned on my soon-to-be ex-wife, and she says, oh, well, this girl here's a damn fool because her friends are telling her to, hang out, and they really don't care about her, but they don't have anyone, and they want to make sure that she is miserable just like they are. And she tells the man, well, misery likes company. And so she used a very, very rough curse word in describing her daughter, right? And she says, this little fool is following behind these people. She's going to lose her man and her family screwing around with them, and this boy is going to wind up meeting somebody else and living well. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. Mm. But the kick of it is that they, sent a message back up to D.C. to my handler, and the FBI guy put down, said, damn, I bent over backwards to kiss my mother-in-law's ass 5 days a week. And she treats me like garbage. This guy's getting divorced, and his mother-in-law thinks he's a prince, like that. And that was kind of a running joke in the agency for a while, But it came out all right. There was a question brought up about what happened to me when I was in the Army. See, because remember, I started this whole thing off when I was 17.
You joined the military at 17?
Yeah,
So you were signed in by your parents?
my dad signed for me.
Okay.
Yeah. I always say he got tired of me eating him out of house and home. And I was.
Yeah.
I'm out there hanging out in the street, getting high, blah, 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 coming in at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Were you in Richmond at that time?
Oh, no, it's in New York.
Were you in Harlem?
Yeah, I'm in Harlem.
Okay.
Yeah,
Where'd you live in Harlem, by the way?
the Grand Projects,
Okay. Where's that located?
125th in Amsterdam.
I had some cousins from North Carolina, the Kellogg's. Mr. Kellogg ran a bar in North Carolina. His son was smart. So he opened the bar across the street from Yankee Stadium. And when they built the new Yankee Stadium, they had to buy him out.
Yeah,
But they lived in somewhere in that area.
right. But the whole point being that, where was I? Oh,
I'm sorry.
What happened? The first time I went in the service, it was very rough. It was 71. And Nam was starting to peter down.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be heading for Nam, but they were starting that drawdown. They were trying to Vietnamize the war. In other words, having more Vietnamese troops, get up to the front and start pulling back Americans. So I wound up going to Germany. But I went as part of the border guard. See, I manned the border and what they call the Trizola point of three. West Germany, Communist East Germany, and Czechoslovakia. See? And I have to watch out for refugees coming across and try to help them where you had to negotiate rivers, for example. I've seen people actually drown trying to get across to the other side. And we had people getting shot trying to come through the fence. Seen a guy get his legs blown off.
Was it just defensive? There wasn't a wall there?
No, that's something that you saw more when you were down in the sector where the Berlin Brigade was at. Did you
The
ever hear
Berlin
that?
Wall.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you had a lot of racial, because remember, 71, King had only been dead for about 2.5 years.
Right.
So the feelings are pretty raw, and you just had a lot of race riots, okay? And a lot of black, in those days it was black, Puerto Rican, Native American, Chicano brothers, and a lot of them got bad discharges, went to jail in the stockades, it was rough.
I had a brother-in-law who was in the Air Force. and
Right,
they-
so anyway, what
I'm sorry.
happened, I was at a point where I was given, I had a choice, go in front of a board of officers or take a honorable discharge under general conditions. And at that time, I was younger. I didn't even think about it. I said, the hell with it, I'm gonna go home. And so I took my discharge, came home, started going to college the first time. And after a couple of years, I said, wait a minute. I want to do things later on in life. And I want to make sure that my record always speaks for itself. So I said, I'm going back in. I'm going to go in the Marines. Make a long story short, the Marine recruiter, because I had come back to New York by that time, the Marine recruiter had decided that his wife, they were having their first child. And that really took up most of his time. But, anywhere you find Marines, you got Navy, or vice versa. So it was a young Navy girl there, and she had been noticing everything. And she said, well, check out the Navy. It's the same thing, which is true. It is Department of the Navy. And next thing you know, I'm in Great Lakes training station, right? Right off that cold-ass Great Lakes.
Which lake?
What's the one by Chicago? It's not Erie.
Not Superior.
It could be, no, I think it might be Superior. I'll look it up later. But I'm right up there by the Great Lakes, about an hour and a half outside of Chicago. And that was a little bit better. And then from there, they sent me to Mississippi. Right down there, remember Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Meridian, Mississippi.
Yeah. Oh.
And I was there, Naval Air Station, Meridian, because they had a school there for yeomen, right? And after I got escaped from Mississippi, as I like to say, I went to the Nimitz. And that's where I caught the...
What did you do on the Nimitz?
On the Nimitz, I was the reactor department yeoman. And I had once upon a time, I could sit down and draw you a diagram of a nuclear reactor.
How many did they have on the Nimitz, by the way?
Excuse me?
How many reactors did they have? Some of those have multiple reactors.
They have, Nimitz had, look, they had at least two, put it that way. Let me put it to you like that.
Yeah.
And I used to have to go down there and change the watch bills, who had to show up. I had to take care of all the enlisted paperwork and also the paperwork for the officers. And after action reports, anytime we had, went into combat, in the 80s, most of the time that would consist of shooting down hostile aircraft. Because you always had Gaddafi, something coming out of Syria, somebody trying to drive a speedboat into the side of your ship filled with explosives, so it kept you busy. And then, like I said, from there, I came to, I decided to re-enlist, and I went to the Defense Intelligence Agency, GIA, and that's a joint service. All 5 branches of the service are there.
A service by that one?
Beg pardon?
All 4 services are serviced by that one bureau?
Plus civilians.
Okay.
Yeah. And when I got there, I said, this is going to be interesting. And once I had my clearance, before I had my top secret clearance come in, I was doing background investigations, see? And then after my top secret finally came through, then that was it. I got TS, top secret, and there was a word that went with that. But anyway, because I used to call top secret cosmic, right? And I said, well, what the hell does a cosmic stand for? And the guy told me, he said, that means that you can talk to God. And he had a point, believe it or not, because what it meant was that the president can see it, I can see it. Okay. I had to be read in on it. So just because you have a top secret clearance, that doesn't mean that you can just walk in and do this and do that. The question is, are you part of that team? If you're assigned to that team, then boom, all the information, you can have access to it.
You were assigned to the White House at this point, then?
Yeah, that was my first job, right? And then after that, I'm over across the way in the Pentagon, right? And then I'm back in the White House. I would bounce back and forth because you have you have dovetailing duties, put it that way. And sometimes I'd have the briefcase, have a pistol strap, the whole bit. And most of my time I was dealing with NSA, CIA, OMB, Office of Management and Budget, figure out how we're going to get money out of the taxpayers for secret projects, all kinds of stuff like that. And how that kind of dovetails into what I see happening now. When Americans, for example, if you are a prominent American, well-known, a lot of money, and you start, taking trips overseas, we're going to know about it. And the reason, not so much of spying, but if you remember, in the 70s going into the 80s, you started having problems with a lot of kidnappings of prominent Americans. So we want to know where you're at. So basically, if something happens to you, we have some kind of idea. And so when I say that Trump is nothing but a Russian puppet, I know what I'm talking about. And now I'm sticking my neck out a little bit, but I will tell you, most people, most men and women who worked Intel in the 80s know all about Trump and his visits to Russia. It's just a core fact. I found out about that when I was working in the alert center. Now, this was like in a certain part of the Pentagon, and you'd have shift work. And all the information, well, he's going for a Christmas vacation with friends in Moscow. That tells you right there that he's very close to these people. Mm-hmm. And remember, this is before, at that time, the Soviet Union was starting to really crack. But they hadn't cracked yet. It really doesn't start cracking until like 89, all right? When we had to go for Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And that was 89, 90. And I'm talking about stuff I was seeing back like in 83, 84, And yeah, Trump was over there big time. And see, people in this country, I don't know, I hate to be, make stereotypical comments, because as a man of color, born and raised in America, I understand how damaging stereotypes can be. But far too many times, Americans, too many of us, we're either in denial or we just don't want to see something. Mm-hmm. See, and that's the case. That's the case with Trump, right? Trump is knee deep into the Russians, big time.
You talking about the Russian oligarchs and the
finance, oligarchs
and the finance that occur with all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is the oligarchs, the people that make things run. And you have to also remember Russia, it's like if a bunch of thieves got together and took over a gas station. That is basically what Russia is.
Today.
Russia is a place that they don't have the kind of industry that you will find in Germany or in Britain or in the United States.
Can I interject something?
Please.
Russia and Germany have a history of working together just for that reason. And that's a fear of the West that's going to happen again.
Well, see, that's before, that's before World War II that you're talking about.
Right.
Okay?
Exactly.
And see, a lot of people don't know that, which shows me that you're very up on on world affairs. And that's the thing with Trump and the Russians. See, that's why Trump ran for president, where he did, and when he did. Now, he paid people like $50 a head to applaud for him when he came down the elevator.
Escalator.
Yeah, the escalator there. and was it Trump
Towers.
Yeah, Trump Towers. But his whole energy for his campaign that came from out there in the hinterlands. You know, Mississippi, Alabama, Missouri, you know, places like that, Virginia, you know, places like that. The reason being because he knows he could not, he wanted to appear that it was like a popular groundswell that brought him to prominence politically. And he couldn't do that here in New York or New Jersey or Connecticut.
Without creating...
No, because of the fact we know what he is. Yeah. We know what his father is or was, and we know what he is, right? He couldn't get away with that crap up here.
Elucidate on what you're saying there. He did create that phony...
yes.
But you're saying he couldn't create that sort of mass appeal?
Exactly. He couldn't create that up here.
Or couldn't generate it.
Right? Or generate it, create it. He couldn't do it up here. Right? He had to go. I don't want to start getting into terms of, you know, because I don't want to disparage other parts of the country. But he had to go. He had to go where people are not as aware. Okay?
And they're suffering, and they're looking for someone to help them out of their plight.
I got some stuff on that also.
Well, what do you
Because, what I'm saying is you got to remember, a lot of these people, I'll give you an example, prime example, right in front of me. Didn't even think about it. West Virginia, okay?
Mansion.
Well, let me make the point that West Virginia, it's like living in a dog kennel, quite frankly. The environment is deadly. Educationally, they're the second poorest state in the nation, okay? They are one of the top 3 most environmentally damaged states out of 50, okay?
The number 2 poorest, number 1 would be Mississippi, am I correct?
It's a constant race to the bottom between West Virginia, Mississippi, and Alabama.
Okay.
Okay? Texas is coming up. They getting down there hard and heavy too. But let's just talk about the top 3, okay? Folks like that, they are easily, I'll say it, they're many times, it's very easy to fool folks like that because they don't get information. They're already predisposed against blacks and Hispanics because they've been taught that the problem for this country is you have too many immigrants taken from us real Americans. And see, they are so trapped in that mindset that they can't, it's hard for folks like that to help themselves. Because if you can't read what's going on, or if you don't read what's going on, and you constantly got like Fox News broadcasting BS, all right, what are you going to do?
Just I just want you to clarify your point. So you surmise that they're undereducated and not getting enough information?
They're underinformed.
Underinformed.
Put it that way.
Okay.
They're underinformed.
Why is that? Do you have any theory on that?
A lot of it, believe it or not, a lot of it is racism. Because if you're scientific minded, right? If science means anything to you, then anytime you see a problem or you see an issue, what are you going to do? You're going to examine it.
Analyze, yeah.
You know, you're going to examine it. You're going to try to study the causes of it, okay? That's why you find so many people in places like that. Uh, they're so into faith. I'm not knocking anyone's faith per se, but in the so-called Bible Belt, too many times people allow faith to overrule uh, knowledge. Okay? What do you have now? You have like a death cult in Western society, but particularly talking about here in America.
I mean,
We have, no, hold on a second. We have a death cult, right? These people that say, oh, well, the vaccines are bad, right? That's a death cult. How could some preacher or, people that don't even study science, how can they tell you that these people are, the people with the science, they're trying to enslave you. In other words, it's kind of like that thing, was it H.G. Wells, I think? 1984. Death is life, bad is good, see? And when people who don't have that basic grounding, it's very, of education, the basic grounding of education, the basic grounding of knowledge, of imperial knowledge. If you don't understand the basis of scientific principles, you are very susceptible to BS. And those folks are very susceptible. I mean, I've been in West Virginia, because that's right up the road from D.C.
When you say BS, you mean propaganda? Is that?
Yeah, plain lies, just like the Nazis did. And see, you have that section of the Republican Party. They are taking the same playbook right from the Nazis. What's his name? Goebbels, their chief propagandist. Those folks are doing the same thing.
Didn't the Nazis also learn a lot from America?
In that regard, no.
Like eugenics and all that sort of stuff?
Well, you're talking about something slightly different.
Okay.
Okay? I'm talking about what makes people believe the
you're talking about pure
nonsense.
propaganda.
Yeah.
Goebbels and
Exactly.
their crew. Okay.
See, you have to take a look at what happened in this country after the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
See, we almost made it. We almost made it at the end of the Revolutionary War. At the end of the Revolutionary War, 9 colonies who became states ended slavery in one form or another. They either ended it outright, or they said, okay, well, 15 years from now, you will be free.
Phased out.
Yeah, it'll be phased out, right? But you always had something or people that would come along and basically trip up progress. At the end of the Civil War, there was a guy from Connecticut named Eli Whitney. He invented something called the cotton gin. And that made cotton production, how should I say, more commercially valuable. So therefore, you need to have more slaves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we had decided that by 1807, we were going to end the transportation of slaves, okay? So what does that mean? Well, that means that slavery will be continued, because now, remember, you got the cotton gin. The South is making money, right? Well, we're not supposed to be transporting slaves over the seas anymore. Okay, well, what you have to do, you have to concentrate on the breeding of slaves, see? What happens again? The Civil War. You got plenty of people that say, well, yeah, slavery was terrible. This whole racial thing is repugnant, And you actually had people that were out there fighting for equal rights and that whole thing. The Daughters of the Confederacy and certain Southern writers, right? What they did, they began their own form of propaganda. A lot of it, they're talking about how good slavery was, the good old days, and people fell for that over a period of time. So that by the time we get to 1877, when black folks needed the help of the Republican Party to stand by them, the Republican Party said, hey, but look, we got rid of slavery, the nation's back together, you guys can handle yourselves down there.
End of Reconstruction.
Yeah, and that ended Reconstruction. And then, to put the icing on the cake, they started telling all these lies about Reconstruction. Oh, well, you just had a bunch of ignorant people right out of the slave quarters, right, sitting up in the state assembly with their feet on the desk,
Birth
a
of a
bottle of
Nation?
whiskey, a big ham, you know, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, just like
Birth of a
Nation.
Yeah.
Just like with Clark Gable,
Oh, Gone with the Wind?
Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
See, and that was anything but the truth, right? And most of the South, for the first time, the poor white kids were able to go
To school.
and get educated on the taxpayer dollar. See,
That came about during Reconstruction.
but they don't tell you that.
No.
See, and see that's part of the problem that we have now. I plan on trying to take a case against the state of Virginia. Why Virginia? Well, because that's the place that my mother ran away from. Her and one of her girlfriends, when she was 16, they just said, the hell with it. We getting the hell out of here. And you're talking about like, what, 1925, something like that. And they said, and they skedaddled. And they came up north. And that's how my mom met my
your
dad.
father. Where they meet in Harlem?
Yeah? Oh, yeah.
What was it? Did they ever tell you stories of what Harlem was like then?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
See, I had my parents. I had a lot of black Republicans.
But that blacks were Republicans because of the party of Lincoln. originally.
Exactly. And see, this is something that people need to understand. See, there are reasons for things. And the problems that we have here in America is that we don't study reasons. We just study results. Okay?
Well, I don't think it would help the people in office stay in office if they really studied the history.
To a large extent, I would have to agree with you on that. The white folks in office from down south, for example, they would have a hard time. And some Democrats, but mainly white Republicans. Nowadays, the way everything's balanced nowadays, that's who would have the worst time. Because I always ask the question, I've been all through Europe, Western Europe, and knocked on the door of Eastern Europe. And my question to people has always been, like, they call, what's her name? My favorite congressperson, Ocasio, AOC. And they say, let's not forget Bernie, right?
But he's in the Senate.
Right. Well, it's all Congress.
Yes,
They're
it's all
both in
Congress, yeah.
yeah.
I was talking about the body proper.
Yeah, and see, the thing is, these people, right, who attack them, they're commie, they're too radical, and bullshit like that. And I say to folks like that, why is it that you want clean drinking water? How does that make you a radical? How does that make you a communist? You want your kids to be educated. You want them to have decent schools. You want their teachers to be given respect and paid respectfully, right? Why is that communistic? I don't believe that that's radical.
That's propaganda.
I believe that that's common sense.
Sounds
And
like
see, that's
propaganda.
what we have. That's what we have allowed to happen in this country. See, we have allowed these Republicans, and not all Republicans are like this now, but I'm talking about that segment that was willing to destroy our Constitution, to destroy our freedom, just so they could stay in office. And this is what we have to fight against. And this is what I'm trying to get people to understand. Now, we have maybe about 60 seconds here, so let me wrap this up. I'm running for Congress, and I'm going to be out there. I start the beginning of March. I have to start collecting signatures. And folks, I'm going to need your help. You got my number, you got my email up there. Please. The gentleman that we have representing the 15th Congressional District, Mr. Torres, he's a very nice young man, okay? I think he's the kind of young man that any mother would be very happy to see their daughter come home with. But that's not the issue. What people have to understand, we are fighting for our lives, okay? Just every time you want to doubt that, think back to that January 6th, all right? Those are the people that want to take over our government, okay? And remember all of those Camp Auschwitz flags, right? Remember all those rebel Confederate flags. What do you think the country is going to look like if you have a bunch of people like that in our Congress? You know, just like you have that guy with the horns coming out of his head, all right? That's what they're talking about. You're talking about a president that belongs in jail. I'm talking about Trump. This guy feels that whatever he does is okay because he's Donald Trump. And that is not going to, that is not how you have a democracy. And we need to make it clearly understood. It's not supposed to be about white, yellow, black, brown, green, okay? It's supposed to be about America. And if we don't fight for that, and by fight, what I mean is that you go out there and you vote for people who believe in our Constitution. If you're not willing to do that, then this country is in one hell of a bad situation. Excuse me a second. And that's what we have to be aware of. Yeah, you want to say one more thing?
Yeah, just one thing before you go. I think the Democratic Party needs to take the initiative
I agree.
and distinguish themselves.
As a Democrat, I agree with you 100%. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm running.
Well,
Because the Democratic Party needs to stop. One of the things that our former president, Barack Obama, one of the few things he did that really disappointed me was when his first term in office, and he was talking about being a transformative kind of president like Ronald Reagan. No, he should have said transformative like FDR. And that's where I'm coming from, okay? Where we actually look out for our fellow Americans without spitting upon the rest of the world. And that's why I think this thing with Joe Biden and how he is standing up to Putin in the Ukraine is so important. Because you cannot allow someone to take over a country through means of war. You can't do that. Because once you allow that to happen, there's no stopping it. And it would seem that there's a part of the Republican Party that are pro-disease, pro-COVID, and Putin.
Yeah,
And that's insanity.
Yeah,
Folks, this has been great. We're so happy that you allowed us to be in your homes. And I will be back next week, same time, same place. This is Robert Gums with the Concerned Forum. See you next week.
Good night.
Okay.
That's over with, right?
Yeah. Now, tell me something.